I've been doing this job a long time. Long enough to know that this job is gonna be different. Everyone thinks they have an answer. But no one wants to do the dirty work. It's an uphill battle. And closing the door on this case is gonna take a new approach. I've been walking in circles for weeks, winding my way through the facts over and over. So it's time. It's time to admit, for this case, I'm gonna need some help. Gentlemen, we've got a lot of work to do, so I've asked you here today. Can we get it done? Can we bring them here?
I think we can. We can get it done.
Welcome to Travels with Charlie, Vermont Politics in Real Life. My guests today are, of course, Governor Phil Scott, along with Dennis Moynihan. Dennis is the Programs Director at Vermont Innovation Commons. And today, I'm glad that you're both here. I want to discuss and talk about workforce development in Vermont. You have a lot of experience with that, Dennis. If you could maybe give us a little backstory on the Vermont Innovation Commons and what exactly that is.
Sure. It's a group of people working on addressing the demographic challenges here in Vermont. We've got a lot of people who we want to bring into the workforce, and more importantly, we want to bring investment into the state to help people start businesses. So what the Vermont Innovation Commons is a group looking at doing that in terms of place and space. How do we create places that we can have people come and start businesses and attract investment and learn new skills?
And of course, also one of the things that you're trying to do is retain youth in Vermont. I know,
Absolutely.
Governor, that's been a challenge for a long time. So how are we addressing that now?
Well, we have demographic challenges that we know, and it results in workforce challenges as well. We have more deaths than births in the state, a stagnant population. And so that all relates to workforce challenges. And even today, I mean, we have a 2.1% unemployment rate right now, and many governors throughout the country would be thumping their chest saying, you know, we've done a great job here, but it only tells half the story. Because along with that, we only have about 1,500 people on unemployment. But we have on our jobs links page, we have 8,500 people looking for jobs. Yeah. So anyone that's looking for a job should be able to have one. But is it catering to what their strengths are and what their skills are? And now we're linking it all together. And it's a challenge for us.
Mm-hmm. As you know, Vermont has a very high level of entrepreneurship, a lot of family-owned businesses, a lot of startups. How do we get that message out to the rest of the country? How do we market that? I know recently we've got an incentive of paying $10,000 to have people move here. What else can we do, and is that even effective?
Well, you know, take that for instance. I mean, that was something that the legislature had come up with. I wasn't sure if it was going to work or not. I was a little bit of a skeptic at first. Mm-hmm. But what we found was all of a sudden it took on a national interest. Mm-hmm. We had over 1 million impressions on social media. We had 3,000 people inquire about that alone. They wanted to know how, they needed a reason to come to Vermont, and they found it. Who would have thought that $10,000 would bring anybody to the state like it did? But it's had an effect. We have over 350 people who have taken advantage of this program. If we can bring somebody in, the return on investment is about 2 years.
I believe that remote work is one of the greatest opportunities for Vermont, because Vermont's a great place to live. Vermont's a great place to raise your family. We all know that. But the challenge has always been, where am I going to work? Where is my partner going to work? And if that job went away, what would I do? Remote work lets you live here and work anywhere in the world.
Right.
And what a perfect model. And I think it's just emerging, but in some of the research we've recently done, there's a number of indicators that there's a trend of an embrace of rural America, a desire to get out of the overcrowded, overheated cities. And so we are perfectly poised as a great place for people to come to and move their life forward. But we have to be able to support people working elsewhere. And there's a whole trend. There's hundreds of companies now that
And we
don't
got to have
headquarters.
internet connection.
We have to have that, which I know is one thing that you've been working on since you walked in the door. But that's a challenge. But we're not as bad off in terms of connectivity. Most of the population centers around the state have good connectivity, and it's one that we just have to keep working on.
Governor, you recently came out talking about the trades and considering that, well, you have a background in the trade, so certainly you can speak of that. But I don't think that's taught enough in the schools or talked enough about in the schools. What do we need to do to promote that? I mean, and these are jobs that automation isn't going to take away a plumber, an electrician, a carpenter. Mm-hmm. And they're good paying jobs.
Yeah, it's important to tap in again to the imagination of our kids and adults as well, but kids as well, to find out what their interests are. They don't know until they try it.
Yeah.
We used to have industrial arts, and that's not as prevalent today as it was then. But there's ways we may have to reinvent that so that we can find out where their interest is, whether it's the creative economy, whether it's in the tech field, whether it's in the trades, whatever it is. Find out what their interest is, and then have a pathway for them to get to where they want for a great career, giving them that good foundation so they can build upon that in the future.
And there's an aspect to that I found. I've moved to Vermont 3 years ago. I came from working in Europe, but I'm originally...
Thank you for that, by the way.
There you go. Yeah, I don't...
Did he get his 10 grand?
Yeah,
No, that was before that.
Timing's everything, as I've heard. But I'm a blue-collar kid from Detroit. Yeah. And one of the things is, I had a limited horizon. I didn't know what the wider world was like. You grew up, with your relatives all working in shops in the auto industry. And I find in Vermont, that's a challenge that we have here, is a lot of young people just haven't had that exposure.
Well, the upcoming legislative session, I'm sure you're getting prepared for it because they're talking again about
paid family leave.
Paid family leave.
We have a volunteer family leave program that we think will work. So there are other options. We have to be sensitive to the fact that it's very expensive to have a family, and child care is one area that is inhibiting for many families. So that's why we've invested more. The legislature and the administration, we work together, and we provided more money for those for child care, and that's important to do. So again, there's not one size that fits all, but there's a balance between doing our part to make sure that we're more affordable, more attractive, bringing more businesses, more people into the state, which will actually lower the burden on everyday Vermonters.
We need more taxpayers. Going back to, I've talked to many administrations, and this seems to be an issue that's been around as long as I've been in this business, talking with folks.
I will say,
has the needle moved at all?
Yeah, I don't know if the needle has moved. It's moving a little bit, but we're, again, there's more people dying in this state than being born. Yeah. So we need to, again, attract. We need more immigration. We need more people here. Yeah. But I will say, to give the legislature credit, I think there's more of an awareness now, more than ever, about this issue, and they're starting to pay attention. They're coming up with different ideas as well, trying to work together. The housing bond was something that we worked together on. I've heard for a long time, decades, about the need for housing in Vermont, and we couldn't seem to agree on how to do that. And we finally came together in my first 2 years. We passed a $37 million housing bond, which leverages another $65 million in private assets, making it the single largest investment in housing Vermont has ever seen. And that's what we need. People want decent, affordable housing. The workforce needs it, and we haven't paid as much attention to that as we should.
And that goes right along with it too, right, Dennis? I mean, I talked with business owners before that say, we offer a job to somebody from out of state, and they come here and they go, wow, job's great, I want to do it. And then they go and they look for a house, and they go, what you're paying me, I can't afford to live here.
Yep. In some of the research we've done, and part of it's been talking to Paul Costello, who runs the Vermont Council on Rural Development, the concept of something called new ruralism has popped up. And it's the idea that it's not about rural America, and I think in a way you can define all of Vermont as rural, although obviously we've got some population centers, but the idea that it's not just about saving a community that's struggling or getting something back, but that we can be a destination, a preferred destination to be. But the challenge is you have to have a holistic response, a response that looks at creating the jobs, but also affordable housing, a good education, that people are accepted and brought into the community, that we have the infrastructure, internet and everything. If we look at it holistically, we become a winning destination. But if we only look at a piece at a time, what happens is somebody goes down the list to make their decision. I'd love to move to Vermont, but what's Susie, my wife, or Johnny, my husband, going to do if I get this great job at the medical center? And we've got to look at it holistically.
Going back to getting that message out, how do we do that? How do we let the rest of the country know that Vermont is the place to come, and it's not just Burlington?
So I travel the state a lot, and we were down in the Virginia area in Addison County and touring Collins Aerospace, UTC Collins Aerospace. They want to expand. They want to bring more people here. They need about 50 engineers, and they said they were having trouble finding the engineers. The wage was about $100,000 a year, so these are good-paying jobs. Yeah. So I was up in the Northeast Kingdom the week after, and I was we were up there with a community group of businesses, and I was telling them the story about UTC Aerospace, and this one company had said, "Well, we don't have any problem finding engineers," and I said, that's really unique. I said, what's the secret sauce? So I can tell UTC what you're doing, because they can hire at a moment's notice. Yeah. And they said, every time we need an engineer, we put an ad in a mountain bike magazine, and we get an instant hit, an instant hire. Because they're leveraging the assets that they have. Mm-hmm. Mountain biking is becoming really popular in Vermont, and we're expanding in many different areas. The quality of life, the outdoor recreation. So if you can attract somebody, an engineer, who has an interest in outdoor recreation, marry the two together, and you have an employee and a family, and that's the type of thing. We need all different levers.
Let's take a look into the future, if you would. 30, 40 years from now, where do you see Vermont? A lot of the things that we're talking about today, they've been challenges for, as I mentioned, a number of administrations. Where do you see it 30, 40 years from today, Phil?
Well, if we build this foundation, continue to shore up this foundation that we have, we'll continue to be a great place to live, work, and play. I think I'm very optimistic about our future. I mean, we're positioning ourselves well if we do the right things and again, build the infrastructure that we need to accommodate the people in the future.
Are you optimistic, Dennis?
Yeah, I am.
30, 40 years?
Your question reminds me of a quote from Bill Gates, which I'll probably murder, but I believe the way he said it is, nothing moves as fast in a year as you expect it to do, and everything moves so much faster in 10 years than you ever imagined.
Yeah.
And I think that's the situation here. I think Vermont, 50 years from now, will be all the glory that it has now. I think it will still be a destination for recreation. It'll still be a beautiful place to live. But things we can't, because of disruption, things we can't even imagine in terms of the world of work and the world of technology will have changed. And I think that's why being open to things like remote work, good internet, if we understand that those changes are coming and we're proactive, and to be frank, if we're aggressive about building our own reputation, then that will be great. We are in a competitive race with every other state and every other country.
This is a nonpartisan issue. Yeah. How do you and future governors convince the legislature that we need to come together on these issues? They shouldn't be partisan issues. If we're going to grow Vermont, we need to be together on it.
Well, I think as we're seeing, some of the polarization throughout our country, I think that what we need to do is listen to one another. Mm-hmm. And none of us have all the ideas on our own. But we need to be willing to listen, at least, and then move forward or not, find common goals to work together on. But I don't think it's the governor telling the legislature what to do. I think it's grassroots. I think people need to tell their legislators what they expect and what they need. We need to do a better job in attracting people here so that we can grow this population. And fulfill the open jobs that we have right now, because that will reduce the burden on everyone here.
Portion of the program where I give you a magic wand and I let you wave it, and anything you could do to, obviously on the topic that we've been discussing today, workforce development in Vermont, a wave of that magic wand. I'll let you go first, Governor.
Well, I don't want to waste the magic wand, but I would say more respect, more civility, more openness, less polarization, more working together. We're much stronger when we're united and working in unison and in tandem with others, and just being willing to listen to one another.
Dennis?
And for me, it plays off what the governor said, is that we've got individual great solutions. My magic wand would be to make sure that we're working together to look at holistic responses, so that, you know, when the family goes down their list of why Vermont, they don't hit item 4 and say, well, that's a showstopper. So having us collaborate, work together, that would be my magic wand.
Once again, thanks to my guests, Governor Phil Scott and Dennis Moynihan from Vermont Innovation Commons, for being my guest today as we discuss workforce development in the state of Vermont. And I also want to thank our host today, Paul Giuliani, for allowing us to use his beautiful office here today and allow us to get into his snacks and his drinks. So I'll see you in my travels. Thanks for being with me, guys.
Thank you very much.
If you be so kind to share what's on your mind, it's time well spent talking president. Though we may not agree, let your thoughts run free. You can have your turn if you feel the burn. I'm on back road gravel.